Well, good morning, folks. It's Tuesday, April 26th. And last Friday, we had a fairly long meeting with Michael and quite a few guests in regards to H466. And we did ask Michael to make a few changes, which he has. And I think that the actual changes start on page, well, the heading is on page 8 on line 12 where it says exemptions.
Is this posted for people to follow?
So if you flip over to page 9, you come to item 4, which says surface water withdrawals for irrigation or farming, livestock watering, or other uses for farming, as a term farming is defined in 6 VSA 4802. So I think that used to say maybe agriculture or something like that. We just changed it to farming. Under the exemption section. Now on page 11, down at the bottom on line 16.
And just so we're clear, that's exemption from the permit, right?
Well, yeah.
It's exemptions from A and B.
Reporting,
Okay,
registration and reporting.
okay, so we're setting them up on a different,
And then this one coming, Chris, is the plan.
okay.
Yeah. And then over on page 11, 116, surface water withdrawals for irrigation, for farming, livestock watering, or other uses for farming as the term farming is defined. So it kind of sets that up as a definition.
So they fall under the general permit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's another one.
Page 16,
Is that the next one?
it's just
Yeah.
a subchapter,
On line 10,
yeah,
yeah, for farming. You added that.
yeah,
And then on 17, basically on line 2, for farming, line 5, for farming or other uses for farming. And then down on line 9, it just keeps adding that or other farming usage. And then, well, we already had this other stuff in the bill. Withdraw more than the 50,000 gallons or 1.5 million gallons in any 30 day. They would have to report to the Secretary of Ag. And but that was already, we didn't fool with any of that last week.
right.
So
So,
I don't know if you want to hear from our witnesses. We've got a pretty good gang on that was here Friday as well as back again today. We could go to Justin and see where he and the berry growers are on on this language. Jackie's on, Sam Lincoln's on, Maddie's on, and we got Matt McCune that hasn't, he's invited, but not.
You're there.
Oh, that, there we go. Justin, did you get a chance to see the revised copy?
Good morning. Yes, I did. Justin Rich from Huntington, for the record. I did look that over, and I had even some conversations over the weekend with some folks from VNRC, and their biggest concerns with it seem to be, in terms of palatability for them, is not getting granular enough reporting data from the farms. So that is not giving them actual withdrawal numbers until we hit 50,000 gallons per day. I just want to say, from our perspective, we don't even mind if we had to do the 10,000 gallon and up number instead of having that be a binary, yes, we irrigate, no, we don't. We don't even mind giving the data at that point, as long as it, continues the permitting exemption for agricultural producers. So if that makes it easier to strike a compromise with the folks from Natural Resources, we're amenable to that lower reporting threshold, as long as the pond exclusion, the metering exclusion, and then the permitting exemption is still in place. I don't know if that makes it easier for you guys to work something out.
Yeah.
So you're on, I don't know if you're looking at the bill, Justin, and good morning. So you're saying just treat, on page 17, we have 2 treatments. You're saying just treat everybody the way we're treating the bigger withdrawals here. So
Right.
anyone over 10 just has to estimate the volume. Okay.
Yeah, the concern, Senator Pearson, seemed to be that if somebody from, if a hydrologist is trying to see, yeah, so this farm says they take more than 10,000 and they're not sure how much, they would have to treat that as a, quote, 49,000 gallon withdrawal because there's so much uncertainty. So,
I see.
and since we'd have to be paying attention to know if we're going above 10,000 gallons, it's just not that much harder to then say it was 20.
Right,
I mean,
right.
from my perspective as a grower, maybe Sam can weigh in with his opinion, but I just don't want that to be a huge hang up, because it's a little bit more work for a few more farmers, but I don't think it's out of the realm of reasonability to capture more numbers.
Did you have a question?
No, just still listening.
Well, usually if you want to do a compromise, you don't give the whole show away. You usually kind of split in the middle, I always thought, and it sounds to me like the other advocates would like just to do away with that second tier, which we didn't propose. It was proposed by the other committee, and I would feel like we had a better deal if it was like up to from 0 to 10 or in 10 above, you just report, but then after a certain amount, somewhere between 10 and 50, if we want to compromise, try to compromise at a number between those two. Did you have any conversations in regards to that, Justin?
Not specifically on that. So I'm not a hydrologist, so I didn't know exactly what levels of numbers they need on certain watersheds. So I couldn't speak to that. I was more looking at it from the perspective of, if we need, if there's this 10,000, below 10,000 a day, you don't have to do anything. And above that, you have to do something, but it's super easy. It just wasn't that much more of a reach to then say, I know I'm above 10,000, I've calculated out, it seems like it's 15 or whatever the numbers are.
Right.
I totally see your point, Senator Starr, though, with that
But
If you would like to stick with the higher numbers, I can't argue with them. But just from my perspective and this perspective of other growers I've spoken with, it's not that big of a reach for the folks in that 10 to 20, the 10 to 50 range to just have the log records that we can make estimates out of in the winter time.
So you have those records anyhow?
Right, because we'd have to keep records to know if we're at 10.
Yeah.
So it's not that much of a leap.
I can see the importance of collecting the data so we actually get a clear picture of, are we using too much? Are we using too little? You know, is it just right? I mean, that's probably worth thinking about as you get more data. But we weren't the ones that were offering to negotiate the numbers.
well, I mean, we had altered the numbers and, but we've taken out the permit, which is a pretty big deal. I mean,
That's the important
yeah.
major part. I was-
So what is the suggestion, Justin, now for numbers?
Well, why don't, before I say, Sam, it looks like you just tuned in. Do you want to weigh in on what you think on that before I speak for everybody?
Yeah, good morning, Sam.
Good morning. Good morning, all. I think that where I would fall on it is that, you know, we're talking about these numbers, but to give it some context, the de minimis flow for my point in the river where I'm at is about 200,000 gallons a day. That's the point in which the current world thinks that it's, you know, insignificant withdrawal, and I'm at 2% of the insignificant amount. So I think it's I think we're talking about numbers that are possibly statistically insignificant and more about I think as we've said, we're interested in gathering data and understanding the realm in which we're operating in, and I think that's all good. But I think that my opinion, not being a hydrologist or a scientist, but understanding the context of the greater river around me, that if I just report that I used up to 50,000, over 10, whatever it is, that's going to give a pretty good baseline on a county by county basis for people to make decisions and for outreach to occur and information to be distributed. So I would make the administrative burden as light as possible, given that the uses may be so small. I don't think we need to overburden people.
So that would be a once a year report, right? Like in January, sometime you'd have to file the report. So, Sam, do you log your usage in as you go when you start your pump, or how do you determine that?
I don't currently log it. We as the numbers that I came up with were based on what my pump capacity is and the times that I run it. I did the math to generate those numbers. So that's where it is. It's not actual metered data.
Yeah. Questions from the committee for Sam?
No.
No?
Well, I guess I have a question, Sam. One of the things I'm trying to balance is this data. You know, it is hard to argue that we wouldn't want a clearer understanding. As I understand from some of where farmers are coming from, is we're not interested in data, especially if it leads to a permit, right? If next year people come back or 2 years from now. So I guess it's just, I'm curious. I could see the data being actually protective of farmers, because it will reveal that actually of all the extraction in the state, it's 6% or something. And so I'm just wondering if you've thought about it on the other side, is that actually we might be better off with this small burden now to sort of keep the status quo going in terms of what farmers are able to do and the ease for farmers. Any thought there?
Sure, absolutely. And actually, I would say that I completely agree. I don't think that there's a side here. I don't think I'm on another side. I think it's I agree with reporting. I'm putting it in the context of that. What we're asking is a it's like I said, I'm at 2% of the de minimis threshold, and so I'm assuming just in our conversation that there are an awful lot of people that are in a relatively similar position. I'm being overly general, but that there's a lot of people that are probably using a fraction of what the world considers to be statistically insignificant. So I just want to put that down as absolutely, let's figure it out, set a precedent of usage and distribution and things like that. I agree completely with your sentiments there. So just keeping it as simple as possible will help keep the buy-in and the interest and the faith in this process strong. So.
Thanks.
Justin, did you want to get back into it, or should we go to Jackie?
I'll just say quickly, Sam mentioned the de minimis, and remember that rule is based on roughly 5% of stream flow is considered. If you take below that, you're not harming the stream. So he's taking 2% of 5%. So it's like 0.001% of stream flow. It's kind of, we've been ignoring how insignificant most of our withdrawals are for the most part. So thanks, Sam, for bringing up again. We're taking very small amounts of water, generally speaking, out of medium and larger size streams. But that's good, circling back to the conversation from a month ago, essentially.
Yeah, but you aren't regulated by that, are you? I mean, you just know what the flow is and what you're taking. And it's considered a drop in the bucket of the whole. But you aren't, there isn't anything that protects you in any way from that, using that low amount. Sam?
I would say that, as Senator Pearson mentioned, and we talked about at some point last week, that doing establishing a reporting database would, to me, my intention of supporting that would be to establish a precedent that would protect me in the future, 10, 20, 30 years out, that should it become necessary to change the way that this is done based on climate change, that I would be protected as a food grower and have established regular usage reported.
Yeah.
I agree with Sam there.
Jackie?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I would just agree, echo Sam and Senator Pearson. I don't think the farmers are worried about the identification or the reporting. It was the piece that was leading right into the permitting that we were having an issue with, because at that point, we don't, as you have said, we don't have a database to show what it is they're actually using. So I have not heard that the farmers were adverse to the reporting at whatever level that it is going to be written within the bill. It was the fact that there was going to be an immediate permit and regulation, and we had no input. So I agree with Justin and Sam, is that I think we're all on board with helping to identify the amount of water we use and putting in the whole context of this is what the ski areas use, this is what the golf courses use, this is what everybody else uses. And then let's look at it and figure out what we need to do next. So I just wanted to agree with the gentleman here.
Yeah. Maddie, do you have comments that you would like to make?
Maddie must be in your car.
Oh, can you hear me at all?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm actually driving right by the State House at the moment. I agree. I think the main concern
Oh,
I don't know if you can hear us, but that was, very good, Matty. We'll take you at your word that you agree 100% with what the others said.
She mentioned to me that she was gonna be driving down to Cape Farm and Plainfield this morning.
That,
No towers that way.
shall kill. Matt, did you have anything you wanted to jump in here on?
Sure, if I could just briefly, good morning, Matt McMahon, with the Golf Course Superintendent's Association. Very simply, golf courses in Vermont by and large are small businesses. Jason Shaddy, he's an agronomist with Burlington Country Club. He participated in the summer working group along with many others. And just so you all know, the golf courses that do use surface waters do so, the majority of them, to replenish these man-made irrigation ponds when rainwater isn't doing it, and you know, runoff and other avenues don't get the levels to where they need to be. So it's not necessarily an everyday use, it's periodic use. You know, we're a little disappointed that we were written out of the I wouldn't want to call it an exemption, but the second group that includes the farmers interface with the Department of Agriculture on the application of pesticides and fertilizers, and are a really good partner with them, along with other regulatory agencies. And so, you know, from the very beginning, Mr. Shaddy with Burlington Country Club, his main concern, and our main concern still, is the development of a permitting program before there's data to show you what the problem is. And so if, you know, you all wouldn't necessarily be open to including us into this group, you know, perhaps you could look at putting off the permitting until we get a look at, you know, what the problem is. I mean, if there's a problem that's identified after data collection, perhaps, you know, a permit's warranted. But I don't think right now we quite know that.
I don't want to disappoint you, but I think we would be reaching way beyond our work area if we added golf courses in on our, you know, on changes that the Ag Committee was making. If, you know, the committee next door, if they wanted to, I mean, they look after all businesses and economic development. But I think we'd be looked upon not with friendly faces if we tried to do golf courses along with. But I understand certainly where you're coming from, and I would have thought that the committee of jurisdiction would have wanted to get the reporting in on board, know what we're using, what we're, you know, what we think we're using and what we're actually using could be a vast difference. And so I think it's important to know the numbers, but then move forward from that point with solid facts, or pretty solid facts, to determine, you know, where you're going to go next. But anyways, we aren't there, and that's why our farmers got very upset and concerned, and actually they got misused trying to get in to talk. So, Chris?
So I, you know, there's pitfalls all over, but what I'm hearing from Justin and farmers is sort of a clean way of us getting what we're after, which is pulling them out of the permit, but sticking with natural resources line of 10,000 gallons and getting data, I see the opportunity. It's not what this draft is, but it's close. And I guess I'm wondering if that's not the smoothest path forward that basically allows us to agree with them on most of it and accept a very clear exemption from the permit and reporting that goes to Secretary of Ag.
Anthony, you said you heard from some folks over the weekend. Do you think, where do you think they are on this if we reduce those numbers?
I think that they're okay, that they'd be okay with, like Chris said, it would sort of smooth things out. If we were to have the reporting happen at 10,000 gallons, that would take away a lot of the opposition. I mean, they would still, some people would still be not happy with the exemption from the permitting process, but I think they can live with that as long as we're reporting the data. And the reporting takes place how often?
Once a year.
Once a year. So it doesn't seem unreasonable.
Well, and it's, I would think during the slow months, if there were any slow months, you know, it gives you late fall and early winter to get the numbers together. Sam?
Yes, to Senator Polina's point, it is once a year to, let's say, to log in and report, but it does require daily administrative tasks of record keeping by the users.
Right, monitoring.
Yeah, I mean, we're not, it would be on the farmer to estimate. So to provide an estimate. So, you know, I hear you're saying that's a recording, a log that maybe now you're just doing in your mind, right? Of I'm assuming you're pretty conscious of when you're irrigating and for how long, but you're just not writing it down. Is that what you're saying, Sam?
That's correct, and it is, and again, because I given the light shown on this issue, if I'm going to report, I want to report accurately. I'm not going to put a meter in, but I am going to log my hours, and I am going to take it seriously and put the time in so that I can provide an accurate monthly of what I'm doing, or daily withdrawals. So,
Is there an hour meter? Is there an hour meter on your pump?
there isn't, but that's actually a great idea. I'm sure I can add something. I don't want to belabor the point, and happy to move on. But I just wanted to point it out that it is. I agree. It is once a year to log in and report, but it is going to require daily journal entry or something, tracking of some kind. So.
Yeah.
Looks like Graham has a hand.
Graham, are you on?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. And Graham Unangs, Drew Fernach, Policy Director, Rural Vermont. I'm here with my daughter, so if I get distracted, that's what's going on. Just some thoughts I have in this conversation. I spoke with Maddie yesterday about some of the conversations she had, and I spoke with a couple more farmers yesterday, not Justin or Sam or other folks on the line here. But I guess I have a couple questions. One is I think, you know, what the concern Sam is expressing, we have heard from farmers. I do want to put that on the table, which isn't to say that we should necessarily be acting to change the bill language. But I did want to say that I've certainly heard that from farmers. I was speaking to a farmer who farms a relatively small amount of vegetables yesterday, and they actually don't record, for example, how much they're irrigating on a day-to-day level. They said they'd love to, but that's just not where they're at right now. Their labor and administrative capacity is. Not to say they didn't think it would be the best practice for them to be doing that. So this, for a lot of people, especially, you know, now that the threshold has been raised to 10,000, it's definitely a big difference. You know, a lot of folks won't be captured at the very small end of commercial farming in particular. But I guess my larger question is, when we're talking about this permitting program, is the proposal that you're talking about, Justin, and some of the rest of you talking about, are we continuing to go forward with the exemption from the permitting process or striking it entirely from the bill? Because I see a big difference in the outcomes there. I imagine if it's struck entirely from the bill, there will eventually be a permitting process. And then we'll just have to deal with it anyway. But if ag is made exempt now, then, that's put in there. And I'm not necessarily, speaking in support of one or the other. I'm just seeking some clarity in terms of what the bargaining going on here is aiming towards.
Yeah, I believe that the rest of the world would still be reporting.
So the permit,
Pardon?
they're still,
Subject to
Under the
the
permit, yeah.
permit. But you guys, the ag sector in farming, livestock watering and all that are exempt from that.
Okay, that's okay. That was just what I was seeking to get some clarity on, because I'd heard in some conversations yesterday that perhaps the part of the trade was to exempt, just to not to exempt the ag community, but to just strike the permitting program entirely from this bill in order to try to put it in a future piece of legislation. So thank you.
what's your preference, Graham?
Exempt.
I personally don't, I wouldn't say preference. I'm really interested in hearing from Justin and Sam and all the farmers I've been talking to. I think all these changes are happening very quickly. It's hard to get a clear answer from, the majority of a community. So I'm sorry, she's on me back in this.
Oh, it's good, it's good.
Yeah, you're gonna be getting a visit from the humane officer using that cat.
I thought I heard you say exemption, Graham. Oh, you must be.
Sorry. What I said was that some of these changes have been happening so quickly. I've been putting notes out to our board members. I'm trying to reach out to farmers, but for us, we're a member-based organization. We really try to take our advice and make our decisions based on input from people on the ground. And in this case, it's been really hard to track these changes and get back to everybody in here. So I don't necessarily have a Rural Vermont coming here to say we prefer the exemption or being struck entirely. I'm just trying to get clarity on where this is right now. And these are both so far. I'd be curious to hear Justin and Sam's and Maddie's thoughts on that as well, and Jackie's.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Graham.
I think you have to be careful because it's not an exempt, it's word parsing, but in the bill, it's an exception, not an exemption. And I don't know, I know it's a fine line, Senator Pearson, but that is the word in there.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference legally is either.
Yeah, I don't either, but that's the word that's used.
Yeah, you're right.
What page is that?
It's on.
There's a couple pages.
It's the first one, I think, 9, 8, 9, right? Exceptions, the following withdrawals
Yeah.
shall not be subject to the requirement.
So that should say exempt.
Well, this might be one of those new standards, but like sometimes we prefer one ledge council likes one word over another.
Yeah,
Well, and it might, yeah, and it might be true that I know this is a strike all, but it does include surface water for public emergency response purposes. And I think those were exceptions in the underlying bill. And we just
Yeah.
added for agriculture. So it's not as if these folks haven't been considered to be exceptional or whatever the value word is. So all you did was add surface water for agriculture. So I think this was in the bill originally.
Yeah. We got a couple hands up there.
Maddie might be on there, so she can.
Maddie?
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me better now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just want to say, I think that compromise that we're discussing in terms of keeping the exception for agriculture and sort of emergency response feels very appropriate to me, and sort of recognizing the essentiality of agriculture, and especially considering, the types of farmers that we're talking about here really are folks that are like feeding their communities very directly for the most part. And so I think that exception feels appropriate to me because it is a recognition of the necessity of agriculture in a similar way that, emergency response is being accepted and in recognition that, you know, for one, a lot of these producers are very likely in that sort of de minimis category that Sam is talking about, very likely the vast majority of them. And at the same time, it is a significant administrative burden on them. So I think the fact that farmers, you know, are willing to provide this data and set up a daily record keeping system in order to make sure that their impact is not adverse, is really significant. And I just want everyone to recognize that. I think we all are. And I would prefer certainly to keep that exception in place for now, at least until we have data to see whether, you know, a permitting process is necessary.
Yeah, thank you. Justin, did you have your hand up as well?
I did, but Maddie just basically said kind of what I was thinking, so I just second her sentiments.
Yeah. Are there any other comments questions from committee members? Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say on Matt's behalf, we did change the definition of irrigation, which impacts the golf courses, and I feel badly about that, but I agree with the chair. There's probably no clear path to bring it back in, and that's unfortunate because I'm a big fan of small businesses, and
We don't have to pass the bill.
What's that?
We don't have to pass the bill.
Well,
It's still an option.
Well, if on June count to 16. You have trouble counting though. You get to 2 and you
Get
can use 1.
I only have 7 to count to, and half the time I only get half of those.
What do you mean? You settled for 2 the other day
Yeah, but I got the most important one on that
and
one.
felt you won.
You did?
Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
If I could just briefly.
Oh, sure.
So just to Maddie's point about the food economy, which we all understand is extremely important. I do believe this exemption includes a number of uses that are not food related, and are irrigation for potentially nurseries or, you know, ornamental plants. And so the nexus there with golf courses is those are commercial enterprises, just like golf courses are. They're not necessarily contributing to the food economy, but they are included in this exception. And so that would be my point there, but I do understand where you're coming from, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's too bad, you know, I'd like to help you, and I think most of the crew.
Yeah, I would, but
Okay, the other thing, Chris, would you want to report this?
Sure.
Well, I figured.
Yeah, no,
An natural resources committee member.
yeah, of the two of us, I'm the one to choose. I can see it.
Well, Luther here, I don't want him reporting it. I mean, he gets 2 votes from the office, and then he folds them before he even gets to a vote some days.
Hard to know what he's thinking of at all. Yeah, I can do that. Are we we have this question though of do we fold the reporting into one scheme as opposed to we've set it up here as 2 different thresholds?
Yeah, and
I just think I don't know. I'm not totally satisfied, but I think we make it easy on ourselves and everybody and do one. That would be, I think it's just more straightforward and less, it means, to me, it's a smoother path forward, and that's worth something at this stage of the game. But
So you're saying taking the records to the 50 out?
yeah, just make, we have sort of one scheme. When you take out more, everyone's accepted if they're not taking 10,000 gallons. But after that, we're asking for once a year estimate. You know, we're way past the meter language, all that.
oh, yeah, we gotta do some amending.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking about, is are we comfortable that would be
Well, I
my idea.
assumed that, we didn't take a vote, but I assumed that we were gonna do the 50,000 and the 1.5 million L and leave it like our witnesses have said that they have no problem with sending, if they do go over the 10 in a day or the 50 in a week, they'd send their reports in.
Yeah, 100, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that just means
Yeah, the other thing, so
we're changing less.
well, should ask everybody, are you agreeable to that as a committee?
Well, I'm not happy about it, to be honest with you. I don't know what the number is. You know, Sam's made good points about the de minimis threshold that he's under, and I don't know if 10 is onerous for people. I really don't. I appreciate Justin and Maddie and Graham's testimony, and Jackie too, and nobody seems opposed to that 10,000 level. But I like what we have, to be honest with you.
Came over from the house as 5.
I understand, I know. And I think we've all agreed that's,
Plus, we got away from the permitting
I agree with that too.
and,
We don't have to negotiate ourselves out of this because it ends up in conference committee. We don't know if it'll be our folks on the conference or if it'll be
well,
natural resources.
it's gonna
And
be
so,
at least, I would say 1. I don't think we can get 2, but we can get at least 1. If there is a conference committee, they might, the other side, if those environmental groups are somewhat happy with the way we've got it, they may not push anybody to
my guess is
to
that's,
a conference committee, and next Friday or Saturday, we're the hell out of here.
my guess is that's wishful thinking.
Huh?
My guess is that's wishful.
Well, you're
thinking.
kind of hearing that is, that's where the tenuous deal is landing on what Justin's talking about, so.
Yeah.
Is everybody else comfortable with 10? Or is there another number that, I don't know.
Well,
I just kind of feel like we have to wrap it up.
What's that?
I just feel like it's hard to talk to this.
Yeah, I know. I wish we didn't have them on.
And I think we need to wrap it up as soon as possible, or we're gonna totally run out of time, in which case the bill dies, which in some ways it wouldn't be, I wouldn't mind if the bill died, to be perfectly honest.
Me too.
well, what we'll do is, we'll have to have Michael change the numbers. And Chris, you'll report it, but I'd like to have you and we'll go meet with, I think we ought to talk with Bloomer
Okay,
to see what the best form is to put our language in place of the other language. If,
substitute report or something,
yeah,
yeah,
so,
okay,
well,
so we'll get that sorted. and
Can I
try
just
to-
have a clarification?
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
May I just have a clarification? So are you talking about on the bottom of 17, you're going to be removing the reported withdrawal for anybody between 50 and 1.5? So basically it's just going to be, you're going to have everybody over 10,000 reporting. Is that what their plan is now? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that,
There'll just be one scheme and, I mean, I think Justin raises the point. If you're taking out 20,000, you have to have some way of knowing that you're not taking out 50,000 and tripping this threshold. So at some level, we've just, this building always makes things more complicated if it can. And I think we should just,
it would
Yeah.
simplify it.
in a way, and so that is what we're talking about, Jackie.
okay, thank you for the clarification.
I need to
Yeah.
head down the hall before we go upstairs.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, we got to be on the floor.
Yeah.
So we still have hands up.
Oh,
Can I just make one comment? I know you're trying to wrap up. I just want to say, I really feel like if what ends up in this bill is a reporting requirement starting at 10,000, I think that what you're seeing is a really good faith effort from farmers to contribute to this data collection effort. And I think you all are very well aware of this. I'm just concerned if we end up going to conference and we end up with a reporting requirement that starts at 10,000 gallons, plus a permitting program that includes farmers, that's going to be a really problematic outcome for producers to be strapped with both of those things. So I just want to be super clear about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
It's a
it
good
would
point.
have problems with us as well at that point. Graham, did you have something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to, this also doesn't necessarily lay in your realm, but just reflect for everybody that I talked to, farmers at different scales. And like Justin said, a lot of folks, especially depending on the acreage you're growing on, do keep good records. And to some extent, this will become, maybe tracking a little bit more at either end of the season when they're not using as much and, not used to paying quite as much attention to that lower threshold. But there are definitely a group of farmers at a smaller scale who I've talked to who aren't recording and who don't know and aren't sure if they'd be affected by this. So just popping in here to say that if this bill goes through with what we're discussing, just ensuring that there's the agency and others are doing outreach to these growers to ensure that they understand the law, they understand how to calculate, that there's some technical assistance to support the community coming into compliance with this registration and reporting, because there are folks out there who are unsure, who are facing a little uncertainty and not knowing exactly how to do that work themselves on their farm. So that's the only thing I wanted to reflect back to you all.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. Well, folks, I guess we'll probably meet again tomorrow morning,
same time. right?
same time, and if you wanna, I'll have Linda send you, as soon as we get that redraft from Michael with that language out, I'll have Linda send you each a copy of that so you can look it over. Then tomorrow morning, if you've got a little time out, you're welcome to sit back in on Zoom.
Okay, I'll ask Michael to make that change at the end. Is there any other little drafting, anything that anybody's seen?
Well, we better talk with Boomer.
Bloomer, yeah, but so Bloomer is the process and Michael is just